Science is central to our world, but I'm struck by how little some people know of its basics. I've seen comments online about cosmology and evolution, dismissing them as just theories. Clearly, the writers of these comments don't understand what a scientific theory is, thinking it's no different from baseless speculation. So, I'm going to run through a few essentials about science, show you how you use it every day, and then tell you how you can disprove the theory of evolution. Stay to the end before you judge me on that. There are words that have one meaning in ordinary conversation, but a different, very specific meaning in science. Let's start with law. You all know what law means, but in science, a law is a description of an observed effect. For example, Newton's law of gravity says a gravitational force F exists between two bodies based on their masses, m1 and m2, their distance apart, r, and the gravitational constant, g. Now, Newton's law doesn't explain what gravity is. Newton had no idea what causes this force to happen. We had to wait until Einstein for that. Even Newton could see there was a problem with his formula, as it makes the force infinite if there's no distance between the masses. And we now know other shortcomings of this formula. We still call it a law, as it works really well in most situations. So that's a law in science. It doesn't explain, it only describes, and only does that in the right situations. So, how do we go about explaining what we observe? Well, you start by making a hypothesis, which is an informed proposal for what's going on. It's more than a wild speculation. A hypothesis has to be based on existing understanding and be a reasonable possible explanation. So, when seeking to explain gravity or heat, you don't just say, they're magic or the will of the gods. You need to do better than that. Most essentially, a hypothesis has to be something you can test. You need to be able to make predictions that you can then try out. If the tests pass, the hypothesis is supported. If not, more work is needed. Now, once a hypothesis has been repeatedly tested, once data is gathered and a body of evidence collected, and it gets generally accepted by the scientific community, then you can call it a theory. In ordinary conversation, theory is used to describe one idea, one possibility of many. In science, we mean something far more dependable. Far from being a baseless speculation, a theory is as reliable as they come in science. Still, scientists love nothing more than finding holes in a theory. They're always testing them to see if the facts fit the theory, because if they don't, that means there's more to the puzzle, more to work out. The theory needs to be improved or even discarded. Great! That's why people who say things like, the science is settled, or, well, you can't argue with the science, are wrong. Arguing with the science, looking for flaws in it, that's how science is done. Now, you sometimes hear comments like, I had to study science and algebra in school, and I never used any of it in real life. But you use them every day. Every modern bridge you cross required someone to calculate the stresses and strains on the material. Every time you start your car, you rely on someone having calculated the current needed to deliver the power to the starter motor. When you use sat-nav, it accounts for the fact that the clocks on the orbiting global positioning satellites run faster than clocks sat on the Earth's surface, because of Einstein's general relativity. The device you're watching this on relies on quantum mechanics for our understanding of the semiconductors inside it, even the pixels in your display. People sometimes think that science like relativity and quantum mechanics are just obscure, arcane ideas. Interesting for a late night documentary, BBC Two, Professor Brian Cox, that's all. But you rely on science, including modern physics, every day. I'm appalled at the lack of understanding of basic scientific method. Some of the worst are the health stories in newspapers. There's a lot of those in this book, Bad Science by Ben Goldacre. But you see people on TV saying they've proved something scientifically when they haven't. They're not testing any hypothesis. They confuse correlation with causality. They don't consider other explanations for their observations. And they ignore well-known biases and effects like Hawthorne and placebo. I hate it when advertisers, or indeed anyone, use phrases like most scientists agree, or 9 out of 10 dentists use. How many scientists did you ask? What are their scientific credentials? Can you give me their names so I can Google them? And did you only ask 10 dentists? How were they selected? Who pays them? I'd love to see a better understanding of the scientific method, not just science content in schools, but there we are. Now, I promised I would tell you how to disprove the theory of evolution. As you know, the theory says all modern life developed from earlier species, which developed from earlier ones, right back to the first primordial microorganisms. To disprove it, all you have to do is dig up fossil remains from supposedly different eras of life in the same layer of rock. So dig up a Silurian trilobite alongside a Jurassic stegosaurus, and the theory is blown. A Permian reptile dug up alongside a Neogene mammal would mean evolutionary biologists have to go back to the drawing board. One discovery like that anywhere in the world, and the theory needs a rethink. Evolution would be easy to disprove if it was wrong. But fossils are only ever found alongside other fossils, which are contemporaneous according to the theory. Evolution is a fact. But scientists, we don't call it that. We still call it a theory because maybe one day someone will find remains from different biological eras in the same geological layer. But they won't. So, study your science. Loads of great scientists on YouTube. I recommend Don Lincoln. Before you go, please click on the thumbs up, share, and subscribe buttons. Have a lovely day.